This is our rocket mass heater. I've had a few questions about it because it features in the background of a few videos. I know we've got actually a build series about how it went together, but this, I haven't done an actually introduction video as to explain what it is and how it works, so that's what this is going to be. The mass heater is the most efficient heating that you can put into your house. Forget anything that runs on coal or gas or electricity. No, this is more efficient. It basically runs on sticks. At its core is a J-shaped tube made of fire brick, insulated fire brick, and as that comes up inside the barrel, the fire happens at the bottom of the J. So, right, the tube that runs through it is in the rough shape of a J. The short part of the J is the burn feed, and that's where the fuel goes in. The fire burns sideways along the burn tunnel, and then it comes up inside the heat riser, which is the chimney up here inside the barrel. And because it's burning a very small amount of wood in a very concentrated way, in a very insulated space, the fire burns incredibly hot. It burns up all of the smoke, it burns up all of the particulate matter, so what comes out of the chimney is a bit of water vapour, and that's mostly it. It's incredibly efficient, there's no smoke. And the fire, because it's burned so hot, it then passes through a flue that runs through the bench that's underneath me, underneath these cushions, and it probably is in the region of 8 to 10 tons of cob, being sand, clay, and a little bit of binder sometimes, and stone. That's what's in here, about 10 ton of sheer mass. And because the ducting with the hot gases from the mass heater run down around the bottom of the bench and then back up and then out through this pipe here, the mass itself absorbs the heat from the gases as they run through the flue, and it stores that takes virtually all the heat out of it. After it's been running for hours, I can still put my hand on this pipe and I can, it's hot, but it's not uncomfortably so. I'm not going to burn myself because all of the heat from a very small fire has been absorbed into the whole heater. So that's a basic overview of how it works. It is, as well as being the most efficient heater imaginable, it's also the cheapest. This cost a lot cheaper, a lot less than any conventional heating system. By the time you've paid for a boiler and you've paid for the radiators and all the rest of it, the installation, never mind getting the fuel or whatever into the house, or you might need a gas tank, or you might need an oil tank or whatever, you're talking thousands and thousands. It stacks up and up and up. This cost less than £1,000 to build, even though we started with brand new materials. We went with really good quality new fire brick. They can be salvaged quite often from inside heaters and so on. We went for all new pipe work through it because we just couldn't source any that was second hand. But again, if you can scrounge pipe, and this isn't fancy stuff, this is single wall stuff, not the insulated. It's it can be done a lot cheaper than that, and a fair amount of labour. But this was a particularly complicated build because the floor of the room that we're in is a suspended floor. There's about, I don't know, best part of 2 feet of space underneath. So I had to pour a big foundation and I had to reroute electrics and all sorts. So it's a complicated build, but it was by far cheaper than installing even a conventional, even a fire these days, even a wood stove. And this just, forget a wood stove. This is so much more efficient and so much more effective than a wood stove that I'm not even going to go there. So it's cheaper than a heating system, but it's also cheaper than a sofa. Now, the sofa that this replaces, we got second hand from someone who'd bought it and had put it into the spare room and had never really used it. But this was back in 2019, so it's going back a while, no, 2018. And he'd had it a few years, but it had barely been used, and it had cost him over £2,000 new. It's an astronomical amount of money for a piece of sofa, for a piece of furniture that's disposable. It's now been got rid of, it's gone. It's, although actually the cushions, that's actually from that sofa. So yeah, it's a disposable, expensive item. This costs less than it. And this is effectively a sofa that I feed sticks into and it heats my house. If you had a phone that you fed sticks into and it paid the bill, how much would you pay for that? Can you imagine? They'd be queuing up for them. But this is a sofa that you feed sticks into and it heats your house. Not the room it's in, the whole house. Because it heats up the house to such a degree that we just open the internal doors and the heat goes out, and just the convective air, heated air that just is in the room goes out and just heats the rest of the space as well. We heat the entire house with this thing. So because of the way it's been built, I never need to pay for an engineer to come and repair this. It's something that I can do all the repairs on myself, which doesn't happen. You know, it just, there's no moving parts on it. There's nothing to go wrong. I never have to pay for, wait 3 days for someone to come out and all the rest of it. I don't have to replace it with expensive parts that are designed to burn out. There's no supply chain issues of that's going to take 3 days to arrive and all the rest of it. If you're lucky, I mean, let's not forget, we've still got supply chain issues now, and it's, we have them for about 3 years. It's starting to become kind of the new normal, this sort of thing, including fuel supply. Because it's been built myself, everything's been built well, nothing's been built to fail. There is no planned obsolescence with this heater. I will never, for the rest of my life, for a cheaper build than I can buy, I will never have to buy a heating system again, because there's nothing to wear out on it. It's amazing. I'll also never need to buy a sofa again. I'm done with that. It'll never wear out. I might have to replace cushions and things on this. Very occasionally, I'll have to replace a brick that's just that's down inside the burn feed. They go every few years or so. Every couple of decades, potentially, I might have to swap the barrel. That's an afternoon's job, maybe. And perhaps every few years, maybe I'll have to change out the top of the barrel. Other than that, that's it. There's nothing else to go on it. In terms of maintenance, it's about half a day, maybe, with a good quality shop vacuum. I haven't got one of them. I had to improvise something this year, and I still got it done in a few hours. It's effortless. It's so low maintenance. It's not even worth mentioning. In terms of the other form of efficiency, so compared to a conventional wood stove, most people find that one of these heats their house on between a quarter or a tenth of the fuel that they normally use. And that sounds like a really bold statement. It sounds huge. In our experience, that doesn't go far enough. We could have burnt 10 times, more than 10 times the amount of fuel that we use in this, and we would still be cold all day. I mean, not just cold, really uncomfortable for days, weeks, even months at a time. It's demoralizing. It's horrible. With this thing, I'm just not cold anymore. If anyone's cold, we just light the heater. It just uses such a small amount of fuel that it's just meaningless. It's a brilliant thing. We're warm, and that, you can't overstate the comfort of just, being warm and not having the concern of, it's a cold day tomorrow, we need to wear, 4 coats in the lounge. It was really uncomfortable for a long time. Another perk of the mass heater is you don't need radiators. Now, some people reckon a mass heater is a big thing, right? It takes up a huge amount of space. Yeah, it does. But it replaces a sofa. This is seating. I mean, I'm really spreading out here. There's a big amount of chunks of space to my side. We can sit 4 big people on this comfortably. It's a massive sofa. The burn unit arguably takes up a bit more space than a sofa does. But, that's the central heating system, all combined, right? All in one thing. So from that angle, it doesn't take up any more space. And you can size them, and this is a big mass. Because it's relatively short compared to some of them, I've made it, there's a 12 inches of mass around the pipes on all sides that run through this. I can burn this thing all day and just keep absorbing that heat and heat and heat, and I perhaps wouldn't have to burn it the next day if it was mild at all. So in terms of the space it takes up, it's not a valid argument. It doesn't at all. And another benefit of it is, because this thing doesn't use any radiators in all the rooms, you get your walls back. So places where, I want to put a bookcase there, well, I can't, because, there's a radiator in the way. Or I want to put whatever, piece of furniture against that wall, I can't, there's a radiator in the way. With this thing, all the radiators, we've still got them currently, but they're going to be taken out of the rooms as they all get done. And that's it, we're done with radiators. That's really liberating, really freeing. It actually takes up a lot less space. It frees up space in your house rather than takes it up. In terms of eco-credentials, this is the ultimate flex. One of these, because of the way we are sourcing fuel, it's from a local regenerative woodland, it's actually carbon negative. We actually sequester carbon into the ground by burning this heater. In the longer term, we've got thousands and thousands of willow planted, and as they come up and they start coming into production, that'll supply the fuel that we need to run the whole thing. So the site itself will produce all the fuel that we need to run this. So we'll get true fuel independence, and that's fairly easily achieved with this because it uses such a small amount of fuel. We're only on a 5-acre site. If we were trying to run on conventional logs, we'd stand no chance. It'd be a gesture. We might get some thinnings out of the shelter belts now and again, but that'll be about it. But because this burns so little, it's actually something we can aspire to, is genuine fuel independence. And the other perk of that is, if you try and store a year's worth of logs ever, you know just how much space it takes up. It's huge. No matter how carefully you stack it, it's bulky stuff. So imagine if every month's worth of fuel that you put by was actually 1 month, it was actually 4 months, or even 10 months. All of a sudden, a reasonably sized wood store is achievable by for a lot of people, becomes something that you can perhaps put by 2-3 years worth of wood. It makes a huge difference. And of course, you've got the possibility with something like this of, if you're on the coast, you can go and you can get driftwood off the beaches. I mean, you can't go and forage, kilowatt hours off the beaches. You can go and harvest wood. It's, driftwood all the time, but rose up. It needs seasoning, of course, all wood does. But you can actually forage your own. And one of the benefits of a mass heater is because it uses relatively small diameter wood. It's not logs, it's sticks. So it's more easy to source. If you've got people that are trimming hedgerows or just trimming things out of the garden, that's fuel to you. If you put that into a conventional wood burner, that's kindling, no more than. You can run this thing on kindling. It's amazing. So it's a lot easier to become more fuel independent. And on top of that, there's people who will actually be very grateful for you to come and just take trees out, fairly small stuff. And you can keep the wood just for taking it, and you can make that cost effective with fairly small stuff, because big, huge, I mean, anything bigger than that just isn't, it's going to need splitting. Beyond that, it's more processing. So you can make use of resources that other people can't. The sort of stuff that generally goes into the chipper, and when you see people taking trees down and stuff, that's the stuff that you want with a mass heater. So you're actually making use of a resource that other people overlook. So the price of fuel tends to stay relatively simple, relatively low rather. And because it's smaller fuel, it's just less work, stacking it, splitting, all the rest of it. You don't have to split it, you're just cutting it at the right size. It's just less work overall. It's safer to stockpile wood than it is any other fuel. You can't really stockpile things like diesel or petrol. They go off. They draw moisture from the atmosphere and they just go off, and they'll gum up your small engines. So things like that for running generators and stuff, it's just not viable. And in terms of gas, you need moving gas bottles around. That's really hard work. That's a lot of work. Refilling, the big gas tanks, they've started getting stolen now. The smaller, the big orange tanks, they've started to get stolen. You're less likely to get your wood pile stolen. It does happen, but it's a lot more secure than it is with the really concentrated fuel that you get with things like propane and so on. So it's just a really simple, safe, stable fuel to be able to store. One of the real benefits of the mass heater is they're really good on old housing stock. Things like heat pumps, which are deemed to be an amazing technology, and they are in modern, really well insulated, draft-proof housing, amazing. This isn't one of those houses. This was built in the 1930s. It's got all sorts of compromises made in terms of insulation. There's a lot of stuff been retrofitted. There's a lot of things will still be retrofitted, but it's still a 1930s front door. It's got an actual keyhole with an actual hole, and there's actual drafts blow in right through the winter. With this thing, it doesn't matter. We can have the curtain moving with a really cold northern wind blowing in. It doesn't matter. We're still warm. It really is that amazing. There's no heating system I've ever had where you just don't have to worry about drafts and stuff. In terms of, you got a teenager, they leave the front door to go to the car or whatever. Still constantly screaming at them to shut the door. It doesn't really bother us much, because it doesn't matter, because 2 minutes after the door's shut, it's warm again straight away, even without it running, because you've still got the heat slowly being released from the mass. We're not relying on it heating the air to heat us. The mass itself radiating that heat keeps us warm. So it's just not an issue. You stop having to stress about people leaving the door open. That's brilliant. You're able to shout at teenagers less. Anything that lets you shout at teenagers less is a good thing. A little side benefit is no one ever had fun moving a sofa. I mean, modern sofas with, masses and masses of puffy stuffing and all the rest of it. Trying to get one of them through a doorway, that's a nightmare, and you've got to do it every 2 years for the rest of your life. I'll never have to move a sofa into this house again, and I'm entirely okay with that. I hate moving sofas. So really, the way to view a mass heater isn't as some archaic, ancient thing made of sand and clay and, you know, bits of stone and all the rest of it, because it is all of those things. But the simple reality is that it is still a better technology than anything that's come along since. Anything that's come along since is designed to burn out. Any conventional heating system is designed to have you replace it every 5, 6, 7 years at the cost of many thousands of pounds, because it's made by people who are in the business of selling you heating systems. Similarly, anything that you get all sorts of incentives to put in, the people who really benefit from you installing those things are the people who manufacture them, and they're in the business of them failing. This thing will never wear out. It's a simpler, superior technology to anything that is commercially available. That said, if you wanted to put one of these in, but you didn't want to build one, it's a lot of labour involved in one of these, it's true. If you just wanted something you could just plug straight in, there are options. In Europe, there is the Gamera stove, which is it's a unit very much like this, but without the mass. So you put your own mass onto it, but even just the burner unit by itself is incredible. It's actually a significantly smaller burn feed than this, so it takes probably about half the fuel. Incredibly, you know, runs on kindling effectively and chucks out a huge amount of heat. So it's a very, very good option. It's the core technology without the mass. In the US, there is the Liberator stove, which is another one, which is actually been professionally manufactured, and is again similar thing. Just this unit. There is something in the works apparently for a unit that will have a mass. You know, it's all top secret and so on, even though there's people talk about it all over the internet. But anyway, that will apparently be available at some point. So, you know, things are in the works. It's not just something that you've got to build it yourself out of stone and clay and so on. There are other options available. It doesn't have to be the big cob bench. You can have a nice wooden bench with a nice stone top and so on. People have built other things like that. So you have options even if you are building it yourself. So in addition to obviously the huge effect of heating the house on handfuls of sticks, the mass heater does a few other tricks as well. We put a big pot on the top of it to heat water. I've actually got a build planned for using the same rocket core technology for a nice, you know, oven and water heater and so on, but you know, that's still in the works. It hasn't been built yet. So at the moment, water for washing up, for, you know, washing pots and cutlery and so on, gets done on the top of the heater. And we can get 2 loads a day. Even after it's gone out for the day, we'll put another load of water on the top of it, and just the heat that remains in the core heating up the bottom of it means that by evening time we've still got more hot water for washing up. It's brilliant. In a similar fashion, just as it's coming to the end of the burn, sometimes we'll put a pot on the top with a cake in it, and we'll just cook that on the residual heat on top of it, because cake's always good. Another good one is cooling. This thing actually has a cooling effect. Because of the way the whole thing works with the heat flowing through the system, it can actually be difficult to light a mass heater in summer, which isn't a huge deal for most people because they don't need a light heater in summer. We can actually light this one very easily, even in, you know, no matter how warm it outside, it lights very, very readily. But if we just left the bricks that moderate the burn wide open the whole time during the summer and leave a window open at night, what happens is the cool air from outside is drawn into it, into the room as air flows through the bench and out through the chimney. As soon as it's cooler outside than it is inside. So as soon as it cools off in the evening, this just starts flowing automatically and drawing cool air in from outside. As soon as it heats up again the next morning, that action stops. So it actually cools air, stores cool in the mass, during summer, the same as it holds heat in the mass during winter. It's a very cool effect, and it just does it all automatically. All we have to do is leave it open. Another benefit of the mass heater is ventilation. When this thing is running, there's a lot of air being drawn from, you know, all the nooks and crannies and all the little cracks in the house, and being, you know, drawing really good oxygen-rich fresh air into the house. And then, of course, you know, as it's drawn out through the mass heater. So it has a really good air exchange feature, whereas a lot of heating systems now, you're in a sealed house, and then you've got to have, you know, ventilation. And then because you've got the ventilation running, then you've got to have heat recovery. That's a lot of technology just to avoid having to light a small fire a couple of times a day. This does this just by running it. Another benefit we get from it is biochar. Now, as it gets down to embers towards the end of the burn, because it's only maybe an hour or so a day, so at the point that the burn starts to, bear down to nothing, you wait until it's out and then you close the bricks completely and seal the heat in completely. What we tend to do is when it comes down to a few embers, is we'll pull them embers out with tongs and just drop them into water, and we've basically got biochar. So we're only producing a small amount of it, but it does add up. And it just lets me shut the heater down a little bit more efficiently, and then that gets added to the worm bin along with our food scraps, so we're ending up with really good activated biochar rich worm castings coming through the worm farm, and it's taking us no effort whatsoever. And the final yield that you get from a rocket mass heater that you perhaps haven't thought of is ash. It's the only byproduct. It's about every, I don't know, 10, 15 days maybe, I'll get into the burn tunnel and I'll pull a couple of handfuls maybe of ash out. That's the only thing that I've got to do, apart from the one clean out that I do once a year. That's the only maintenance that I do week to week, month to month. And it actually is something that then I can add to the garden, and it's actually helps grow plants. So it's actually a truly regenerative heating system. By heating your house, you make the world a better place. If you did want to build your own rocket mass heater like I did, you absolutely can. But there's some irony here. YouTube is not a good source of information on rocket mass heaters. This rocket mass heater, we've got a full build sequence on it. It was built by the book to be as standard and boring a mass heater as possible. It's quite a long thing if you went to watch the whole series back to back, and still it barely scratches the surface. There's a lot of data that just you can't put into a YouTube video. And that's one that's built by the book. There's a lot of YouTube videos from people who claim that they've invented the newest, amazing, greatest rocket mass heater. Kills any other technology. It's fantastic. They've built it, burnt it 4 times and done a YouTube video. Not many of them come back 2-3 years later and say, and it's still the best technology. There's a lot of misinformation regarding rocket mass heaters on YouTube. Some of them look a little bit unsafe. If you want to build one, you need this book. I'll list the ISBN down in the description. Also links to the 2 commercially available ones, their websites. I don't get any kickbacks from any at all, but seriously, I do not get any incentive for anyone buying this book. If you're going to build a rocket mass heater, you need this book. I would not have even attempted to build this without this. It's as simple as that. You absolutely need it if you're going to build one. There's a lot of detail in it. If you're in the US, it's great. If you're in Europe, a little bit less useful if you've got to do a certain amount of translation between imperial and metric, but still, you can do that easily enough, and it's still an amazing resource. You need this book if you're going to build one. There are a series of videos available as well. If you're anything like me and you're going to build one, I wanted to see absolutely everything that was available on the subject. So I have seen them. There's bits of them that aren't particularly relevant. They're experiments that weren't massively successful, so haven't been done. But they're interesting in their own right. If you're going to be building a mass heater, it's interesting to see what's failed. There's a link to them down below. That is an affiliate link. I don't link to anything that I don't support. This is an affiliate link. I think it's the only one we've ever done. Like, I'm putting the ISBN on this. I'm not putting an affiliate link to certain online booksellers because, they make enough money. I'm not giving them business. Get it from a smaller bookseller if you possibly can, but that's your personal choice. So the videos are an affiliate link, but you don't need the videos. They're useful, but you absolutely don't need to buy these videos in order to make a rocket mass heater. You do need the book.